Greetings, Kindred. I am Voivode Maquette, and welcome back to our world of darkness and the Noddist Library, where we are doing another book review. It's been a little while since we've done one of these, but yesterday, as I was coming home from running some errands out into the world, this little monster showed up on my front porch. This was delivered, and I was excited. I was excited. I spent a good portion of my time yesterday running up to the people inside of my household going, "You'd never expect what came today." Because I'm corny like that. But I do want to give an actual book review and possibly even give a little bit more structure to these videos with this one. Because, I don't know, I have in the past been a little bit more enthusiastic than I should be. I see the book and I get excited and I just want to run around. But I actually read through this one first. You're not getting my first impressions. You're getting a couple of hours of me being able to actually sit and process what I'm doing here. That it's not just me being excited because I've got a brand new toy or a brand new weapon in my storyteller's arsenal. This is something that I've been waiting for a while. I have been enthusiastic about this. And since I saw the first person in my news feeds say, "Hey, look what arrived," I've been anticipating this. I've been wanting to get my hands on this book. And it's a Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition book. I'm just excited to see what else they come out. And that's actually where I want to start, is I want to point out something. That this Second Inquisition book is a supplement for Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition. This is not a player's guide to the Second Inquisition. This is an antagonist book, very much like the Sabbat book that we received not too long ago. This book is not meant for player consumption. This book is meant for storytellers to help flush out their stories. And I don't know, I go both ways on those kind of things, but I do also see them as needed. And even way back in the days of earlier editions, we used to have Hunters Hunted, which was a supplement for Vampire the Masquerade, but it was a supplement that let us build player characters that used the vampires as antagonists. And we'll get into that. First off, let's go ahead and give you a physical review of this book. First off, this picture that they have, in fact, I'll pull it up so that it's a little bit better than what you're seeing. This picture that's on the cover of the hunter holding their gun with the city in the background, where it could be lit up with the lights of the city in the windows, or it could just be on fire. Who really knows what's going on here? It's beautiful. It's gorgeous cover art. I always love seeing the photos and the drawings and the illustrations and stuff that they put into these books. They're always beautiful. It is a hardcover book. Go ahead and give you a page count if you care. It's roughly 162 pages if you count the glossary and things like that. And it does come with a very nice little silken ribbon within its pages to help you keep track of where you are within the book. So, and I actually, as a book lover, I always love that. I always love seeing the little bookmarks that are just placed in. Because I'm also an anti-dog-earer, if that makes sense to you. The people who fold the pages and dog-ear the books, that drives me nuts. But as for physically, it seems very well put together. The pages are glued down very well. I don't have any physical discrepancies with my copy of the book, although I have seen some people who got the core book where the pages were folded in on themselves. Even when it was wrapped in plastic, but that's sloppiness with packaging, not really anything else. I guess the only thing that I can say is there is this, you guys can't see it, I can't really, you can kind of see a little shadow there. There's this little divot, little dimple thing going on the inside of the page. But other than that, the book is in great condition. The spine is completely intact. There's no boxing around the edges. They did a very good job sending this to me, and thank you very much. On the back, it says, "The Secret Church in the Hidden State, hunting the hunters in cities and across continents. An antagonist guide to the rising Second Inquisition. This book contains opponents for your kindred and their special forces and equipment. Information on the fires rising against the world's vampires, stoked by the Society of St. Leopold and the American First Light Black Program. New tools to expand your chronicles, including eldritch artifacts, dozens of dangerous antagonists, and the tactics your coterie can use to fight back." Very well put there. Very well put there. It says Second Inquisition on the back. It's a beautiful book itself. It does have a full lexicon if you guys want to use those things within your chronicles, which I always find it's nice to have little tidbits of information here and there. The opening sequence at the very front of the book, which is a top secret first light attack on a coterie of 3 vampires, is well put together and can also show you why a lot of vampires get caught, because it is the cockiness and the headiness. It shows tactics that First Light uses to hunt down their targets, and it's very nice. It's very, very cool. It does give you very interesting little tidbits of information that I was unaware of in the opening introduction, called Opening Gambits. I'm not going to read the entire thing, but I do want to read out at least the first paragraph here. "An unnamed Toreador coined the term the Second Inquisition for the shitstorm that's deservingly raining down on the Kindred right now. It is literally a term of art, not a specific reverend. You can't call the Second Inquisition on the phone or email them at si.gov, although if you do send an email to that domain name, somebody reads it. Nobody has Second Inquisition letterhead or a cool SI logo. Even the Vatican just considers this the same Inquisition as the one they started in the 13th century. Only the fires blaze higher and higher tech, now as the end times near." So what that's saying is that there is no Second Inquisition organization, that some unnamed Toreador came up with the concept of calling it the Second Inquisition. The church sees this as what they've been doing the entire time, and there are government organizations such as First Light and things like that, which are funded by the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, various government organizations that are coming together. And sometimes the governments and the churches work together, and then we have what's known as the coalition. They call themselves that. That's their word. The Second Inquisition is our word, which is another reason why we have Second Inquisition printed on this book, because it's a Vampire the Masquerade source book. If this was a hunter book derived to make player character hunters, it would most likely say the Coalition. But I do want to say that there's a good chance that if they ever did decide that they're going to release books that are specifically meant to be used as for player characters, then it's more likely that we'd end up getting like a Society of St. Leopold's book, a government factions book, something like that, where they might work together, but they don't necessarily belong to the same groups. It does go into how to use this book, just like all World of Darkness books do. This is a book of antagonists for Vampire the Masquerade. It contains no systems for developing Inquisitors or Hunter player characters. Its guides to role-playing and deploying these sorts of characters remain focused on the storyteller. it does contain a whole lot of plug-and-play hunters suitable for any type of contests in any type of chronicle. Not just chronicles where the secret teams of deniable government killers might burst into your havens any morning, but chronicles set where the kind hate, fear, and resent the monsters in their midst. And even more, among them, armor up to do something about it. So pretty much any chronicle in these modern nights. Storyteller characters use this system, artifacts, tactics, and weapons in this book against the player coterie. Storytellers can and should put any number of obstacles in the player's character's way if they try to turn them around and use them themselves. Challenge makes for satisfying stories, and if you touch a holy icon without research or gloves made from a corpse's skin, you deserve to get burned. Mechanically, some of these systems are deliberately overpowered. They abstract away a lot of training, cooperation, information mining, and tax money, with the goal of replicating the paranoia and danger Kindred experience as the Second Inquisition rises. Now, as a storyteller who has already used the Second Inquisition in a major way, if those of you who pay attention to the Thicker Than Water recap noticed the story that I did called Project Ragnarok, which took place right after our first story, which was Sticks and Bones, you'd know that I attacked with full force when it came to the Inquisition. Now, I also used full force of SPCs to attack them back. And that's because they were too large of a force to really deal with the idea of my player characters just going in and handling it. Not because I did not trust my player characters, but because it was meant to be overwhelming. It was meant to be terrifying. And it was meant to have them gather the anarchs to be able to fight back on this. When I used CERT, which is actually the real Portland, Oregon Special Services division of the police, I made the entire organization hunters. That is so unlikely. It should not be that big. I did it to prove a point. I did if you're gonna go, go big or go home kind of situation. And my players made the best of it, and they did such a good job, and I'm so proud of them. And I didn't bring any church-related facts into it. I literally just did militant police state kind of fear in these vampires. And this book can allow you to do that, but I'm letting you know right now, after reading through what I've read through on this, which is cover to cover, it is terrifying. It is a terrifying book of antagonists, and I want to point that out, that for a game where the players play the monster, this is a monster manual. Now, there is, just as I said for the Sabbat, absolutely no reason why you couldn't just take this book, turn it around, and make this the player character book. There's literally nothing stopping you from doing this. There's nothing stopping you from building a human in Vampire the Masquerade. Because, if you look at the companion, the book that they so graciously gave us for free to help fill out the errata and give us the missing clans and things like that, there is a how to build humans section towards the back of that book. And that's all you need. That is all you need for that. This book right here is going to give you extra things that you could add on top of that to play a fully functioning Second Inquisition game and actually get a lot out of it. Now, Chapter 1, when you get into this book, gets into hunter-killers. And what this is a list of specific types of operatives within the Second Inquisition. They go into great detail explaining exactly what these people are and how to use them. It's done very well, actually. I can't complain anything on this one. The opening paragraph says, Despite common misconceptions among the Kindred, the Coalition isn't all stone-faced militants hiding swords under their trench coats. Each operation and maneuver requires a varied mix of skill sets, a hard ticket to fill, even if all personnel survived the first few months. The Coalition consistently seeks out and recruits assets who can bring novel approaches to their work, and plenty of hunters and helsings self-recruit with the same results. The monsters they hunt are undying manipulators, with an inscrutable array of supernatural powers at their disposal. Cookie-cutter tactics and paint-by-number massacres won't win this war. They need an army that can fight on every battlefield. First thing I want to point out, well described. It's absolutely true. You can't just walk in with an army of the exact same character that's just going to sit there busting into havens and blowing things up. Not only is that going to be frustrating for your players, it's also kind of just it's lazy storytelling. All hunters are not going to be your Rambo types. They're not going to just rush in with AR-15s and just shoot everything up, or like rush in at 2 o'clock in the afternoon so that the players don't even have a flippin' chance to fight back and stuff. I mean, that's how you end a story at that point. Like, even if you don't exactly intend on ending the story, that's how you end a story. That's how your players just go, well, screw this. How am I even supposed to fight back against this? I've run scenes where everything happens during the day. I have run scenes where they needed to find a way to get from point A to point B without burning to death in the sunlight, and how the ability to stay awake becomes a major mechanic on just doing things. But that can't be your entire SI plotline. It's boring. It's not fair. Like, and I mean, I understand that the SI is not going to be fair when they fight back, but like, when you're running a game, you got to do something to make it fun. Even if it's supposed to be filled with drama, you're supposed to be enjoying yourselves. Your characters could be miserable. The players need to be smiling. You know? They need to be able to enjoy it. They need to be able to look back on things and actually have fun with the chronicle that you're presenting. Now, the first thing is they have fixers and facers. These are your social group of hunters. These are the people who get on social media. These are the people who are digging through phones. It's actually a pretty cool way of looking at the hunters. And there's a large group of variety on how to actually run that kind of hunter. It's actually quite a few pages on how to actually get through that. After that, we have your techies and your sleuths. So these are going to be your detectives. These are the ones who are digging through data files and trying to find out if there's any lost corners of ShrekNet that have survived. Very, very cool characters. I enjoy exactly how they have these. And again, long list of characters on here. Hitters and operators, your physical. These are your classic hunters that people think about. These are the ones who are busting in, attacking, and doing everything that they can. Now, each one of these examples has a full-on character sheet that you can use for making an attack actually happen. With the general difficulties, which I gotta say I love the concept of the general difficulties. In fact, if you guys are playing this all this time and still do not understand how it works, it's two numbers. It's a number with a slash and another number after that. And the way that they work, it actually explains it again on page 13, just as it explains it in the core book. The general difficulty values given for each antagonist, let the storyteller treat them as simple antagonists, such as in the core book on page 370. The number before the slash, so the first number, represents the difficulty to defeat their strongest ability. So this allows you to have a little bit of specialization in this SPC. So if this person is a brawler, the number at the first number in the set is going to be more on melee or on brawling. If the person is a hacker, it's going to be more in technology and computers. That is their specialty. Then the number after the slash is the difficulty to overcome them in all other tests. So it's just your generalization, which is why it's called general difficulties. Very simple to use, easy way to do NPCs, and it's also so the storyteller is not sitting there for hours upon hours upon hours writing out the drones. Just the basic characters. But again, they've given us a large number of these characters for our use. I'm not going to go into detail on these things because they literally are just NPCs. After that, the next type of character that we have are Warlocks and Clerics. And these are magical characters. And I have to say that I do like these because it talks about how some of the organizations have actually set aside their inacceptance of occult means to take out vampires, and that they see it as like a lesser evil if they're using it to take out vampires and stuff like that. So that's very cool. I like that. It goes into a lot of detail about Brazilian forces and things like that. But it also goes into the fact that the Society of St. Leopold is using everything they can to snuff this type of practice out. That they don't see condemning one's soul in the pursuit of Faustian bargains with demons to be the right way of going about things, as you wouldn't believe that. But again, same thing, it goes into various magical people that you can use as antagonists against vampires, but it also states that these are increasingly rare, especially on the front lines. You don't find mages or sorcerers out there helping the SI on the street. However, they could be using their power to bless weapons in the background. It also goes into a whole thing. There's a nice big section on page 39 on holy ground and how that works. How the different traits, what the different dots in holy ground, if you will. One would be like a neighborhood religious building, consecrated graveyard, something like that. A 2 is a large mosque, a cathedral, a temple, or a synagogue. A 3 would be a venerated site, like Mount Athos, the Blue Mosque, the tomb of a saint, something like that. It's a place where great veneration and stuff goes to. Sites dedicated to St. George and things like that. A 4 is going to be major holy sites, such as Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. Very large places of faith where people congregate to pray. 5 is going to be Holy of Holies, such as the Wailing Wall, or Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem. Those kind of things where it's an undeniable force of faith. That kind of thing. But it goes into talking about how exactly you would use that against a vampire, depending on what the faith rating of the area is, coupled with the person who would pretty much be in charge of it, so their faith rating, versus the resolve plus occult of anybody who's trying to taint the faith area, or who's trying to the book itself says if they're trying to desecrate holy ground, and it does give an example of Sabbat on there, which is fun when you stop and think about it, because World of Darkness is talking about some hot SPC on hot SPC actions, since they haven't actually given us Sabbat playable characters yet. But again, there's no reason why you can't, turn this into player character stuff. Even actually reading this book right here actually kind of is easier to transfer to player character use over the Sabbat book. Now on page 43 we get Arcane Fx. It says, if their art grants them an arcane effect as listed below, a sorcerer can spend a point of willpower and make an occult roll. If they succeed, the effect occurs. Subtract 1 die from the pool if the sorcerer hasn't spent a previous 8 hours in appropriate ritual preparation or activity. Subtract 2 dice from the pool if they attempt to effect while in combat or otherwise stressed or distracted. A sorcerer can only use 1 effect at a time. Sorcerers who draw their power from the divine often have true faith. If so, they can add their true faith to their occult pool. No sorcerer wields all or even very many of the possible sorceries here. These examples come from a broad menu. And that is things like halt. You guys know what halt is. With a commanding word, the sorcerer compels a blank body to take no action. You basically stop them in their tracks. Heal. With a successful roll, the sorcerer can heal as many health levels as they have in their successes that they've rolled. Hide from the hawk. For 1 scene, the sorcerer becomes imperceptible to the blood sorcery ritual. Illuminate the trail of the prey and eyes of the nighthawk. That's actually pretty. That's pretty defined. Anyway, there's a list of sorceries on here, and they're actually pretty good. I'm kind of partial to Resist Oblivion. The sorcerer remains unaffected by the Oblivion abilities Shadow Cloak and Stygian Shroud. That's actually pretty cool. It's also very specialized. That tells me that they've come up with sorceries that are specifically against the Lasombra, and due to the fact that the Lasombra is so interconnected with the church, that does make a lot of sense. Moving on. Turncoats. This was something that I saw that made me just go, oh my god. Because we've got some stuff that we can use in game. We've got some stuff that we can use for player characters here. And that is, the Coalition holds no common position on the use of blank bodies as assets. Some personnel will never trust them, never believe that they share a common cause, and refuse point blank to work with them. Others find the ends justify the means. They may not trust their blank body allies of convenience, but they'd rather make a mission successful than stick to their principles. Still, others believe that even these monsters have a chance of repentance. Ex-ghouls have a substantially easier time finding acceptance. Not all hunters accept them, but it's much easier to believe in a narrative of liberation or revenge. The reason this caught my attention is because the very first SPC that is mentioned here is a blood alchemist. It's a thin blood character, and there are 4 formula which can be used in character for this. 4 formulas. There is a 2 level 2s and 2 level 3. There's we're going to go over these when it comes to going over like more the blood sorcery stuff in level by level. But I do want to let you know at least what the detail, what the actual fluff says. There is the level 2 blood Mandiglor. This concoction can taint an entire herd, but must be imbibed by the victims within a few hours of being distilled. So you can actually poison the water hole when it comes to vampires. There is the Mirror of Trust. This mixture, when imbibed by the alchemist, makes them compelling and attractive, overwhelming other blank bodies, self-control, and encouraging them to speak honestly and frankly, especially in response to direct questions. The level 3 is Fang Stinger. This poison can be injected into a mortal's bloodstream, dealing no damage to them through the miracle of alchemical transformation, but inflicting considerable pain on the blank body who feeds from them. Other variations create different effects, babbling incoherence, and the inability to use disciplines, indifferent, calm, etc. That's nasty. Again, you're poisoning the vampire's food source and causing effects into them. Then there is freezer fluid. When ingested by or injected into a blank body, this serum freezes their limbs, making them clumsy and possibly even helpless. Wood absorbs it. Plastic remains inert. It sublimes rapidly from metal. Hunters either covertly inject it into their targets or soak their stakes in it. The target gets a wits plus awareness roll to avoid drinking it in a beverage. Difficulty of 2 for non-foaming beverages. Difficulty of 3 for beer. That's interesting. Anyway, those are 4 blood alchemical formulas that there's no reason why your characters can't learn them other than the fact that they're just nasty. Those are nasty things, and they're... I mean, like, if you introduced a thin blood that's working for the SI, and... I mean, I think if I was a thin blood... I would probably try to get other thin bloods involved in this. Just not even let them know that you're SI, but, like, get in there and spread these things around so it makes the other vampires in the city targets. I mean, imagine the fact that, like, pretty much all thin bloods are hunted by the Camarilla anyway. Like, there's a couple special exceptions, such as in the Coteries of New York game, there was a thin blood primogen, a duskborn primogen. But, like, they're heavily repressed. They're heavily treated as second-class citizens, and a lot of them have just had enough. After that, we do have the Brute, which is a vampire that has been held captive, starved, and basically is kept on a leash and sent into attack. And there's various variants of the Brute. My favorite being the Tzimisce Monstrosity. You guys can just guess what that is. After that, it goes into the building your opposing force. Basically how to properly build one of these characters. It goes into different types of backgrounds, the way resources work, you can't really call them coteries, but they pretty much run on the same factor. But there is complete how to build a squad of monster hunters in this game as SPCs. And oh my god, there's so much when it comes to this kind of thing. The operation procedures, so how these types of groups attack, where they start. And I understand, as a storyteller, man, that is dizzying. To try to figure out how exactly this massive government or church organization, or mix of both, is actually going to start attacking your player characters. Do they just show up in white vans and start attacking? How did they get the information for that? Like, that leads actually to probably my absolute favorite thing, which I'm going to skip this part right here, and we'll get back to that. Where is it? Here we are. This was introduced in the Fall of London book, and this was actually my favorite part, which is the standard operating procedure, also translating to the threat level. I love the threat level system. Really, depending on how your characters deal with it, is how the threat level's gonna go. You could actually have it escalating, declining, like you can have it mix around. But the threat level system is such a good way of keeping things. The coalition response algorithm is what they call it here. And it's the levels of attentiveness. It goes from a level 0 to a level 5 in response. 0, obviously, under the radar. The algorithm depicted here just doesn't really have a level to describe it. It's literally your vampires are doing a good job not drawing the attention of the Inquisition. Level 1 is observation. And there's actually like data analysis points on how to actually run that. Level 2 is investigation, where they're actually going in, shadowing, checking out common enemies, seeing where they can infiltrate and things like that. Level 3 is attrition. That one right there is pretty screwed up because it gets into a lot of things that the actual governments of the world do. Deprivation, making it harder for vampires to feed. Gentrification, destroying vampire areas by turning them into things that humans would use, and that makes it harder for vampires to actually get in there. Deprogramming, getting in there and actually like identifying ghouls and things like that and turning them against their masters. Then level 4 is confrontation, where you actually get attacks and things like that. And then level 5 is recruitment, is induction, is getting more and more warriors to fight for you. It's actually a pretty twisted way of going about things. But going back to chapter 2, yes, we're only on chapter 2. We get into the special weapons. And I want to say, dude, some of these are pretty nasty. We got flashbang grenades, plastic explosives, chainmail armor, white sulfurous, rubber bullets. Seriously, there is so much in here when it comes to what you could use for your vampire characters with getting this stuff. Like, there used to be a military influence, and I'm really glad that it's not really a thing anymore, but just looking at this right here, a compound crossbow, not hard to get. A flare gun, you can get that in a sporting goods store. I gotta say that I was highly enjoying and laughing at the rules for the garrote, like garrote wire, like military enforced garrote wire. Long range acoustic devices, night watchmen, riot forms, tasers, water cannons, different types of ammunition. This is all pretty darn cool, dude. And then we get into vehicles, armored SUVs, police and pursuit vehicles, surveillance vans, support helicopters, hawk drones. Like, there's so much cool stuff on here. And then we get into X-Tech. Only First Light has the budget and facility to make X-Tech gear available, with a very few exceptions mentioned in the specific gear write-ups. The Order of St. Leopold tightly controls the red gas, for instance. For those of you who have not played Vampire the Masquerade Blood Hunt, the red gas is horrifying. So it's called the Velum Sanctori. The red gas was used in LA by Night. It's used in Vampire the Masquerade Blood Hunt, like I was saying. Its official name is the Latin for Holy Veil. But everyone except for the stuffiest Leopolites call it the red gas. The Order of St. Leopold keeps tight control of this experimental weapon, releasing it only for the highest valued targets. Princes, Primogen, Elysiums, or conclaves. Nobody outside the highest ranks of the order know its true nature. Some speculate it comes from the holiest possible matter, such as the grave dust of St. Peter beneath the Vatican. Others believe it is a purely theurgic weapon. Inquisitors deploy the red gas from sprayer tanks, either man-carried or dispersed from the back of trucks pulled up to the door of a sealed target. Blank bodies see the gas as a red mist, hear horrific wailing and screaming, and their bodies begin to wither. Most mortals experience no effects at all, although Bose troopers, which are a Brazilian special forces, specifically vampire hunters, whisper that the gas looks redder to you the more sinful your nature. The red gas causes 2 levels of aggravated damage to blank bodies in each turn of exposure. Most blank bodies don't stay in an affected area long enough to die of the gas, but it's certainly possible. More often, they flee into the waiting Gladius Day strike team, ready to escort them into final death. That's the only major weapon thing I'm going to read, because this red gas has haunted us since LA by Night started using it. And it's terrifying. It's a very terrifying mechanic altogether. It goes into artifacts, which are great, relics, and they all have mechanics that can be used easily in a game. There are Chapter 3 goes on to the goes into Dangerous Game, which goes into that threat level tactics and stuff that I had already covered, just because I get excited about that and I couldn't not cover it. But anyway, then it goes into various things. Chapter 4 is fire teams, and when we get into fire teams, we're looking at actual troops that come and attack. It goes into the United States. There's First Light. It goes into FBI Special Affairs Division. In the United Kingdom, it goes into the JTRG, the Joint Threat Response Group. It goes into Russia, the Unit 242 Special Purposes. Like there's actual like how to run things here. Brazil, the Society of St. Leopold, Sisters of Sebastian. Like it goes into the Lazarine witch hunters, the various types of hunters that you might run and how their organizations work. Chapter 5 is Mirror Mazes and goes into basically how to integrate these characters into your setting, how to actually work a chronicle with this kind of stuff. And that's it. It's a 5-chapter book. It carries a lot of weight. Now, with that, I do want to point out that, again, I've said it, this is an antagonist book. This is a monster manual against your monsters. And where I would like to see them branch off into other things, it really does seem to me that World of Darkness is trying their damnedest to focus on neonate to ancilli stories, because that is the most human portion of a Kindred's life. They're trying very, very hard to focus on the personal horror of one's humanity eroding off of them as they are forced into horrible situation after horrible situation. And I can see where they're coming from, but I've played elders with like humanity issues. You know, like I've played elders who are just holding on to those last scraps. And sometimes that can be a compelling story. And there's no reason why you can't. The first variation that we added into Thicker Than Water was Deacon Royce, which was an 8th generation elder Lasombra Antitribu who was like over 500 years old. It's not Ancilli, that's an elder. We've got 2 Sabbat base characters in Thicker Than Water right now, Justin Murphy and Gabriel. And these are things that like can be brought into the game and still can add elements of personal horror. I think I proved that the last couple of weeks when dealing with Gabriel and his interactions with the One-Eyed King. There's nothing in the Inquisition book stopping you from actually building human characters. There's not. The companion book, as I said earlier, gives you step-by-step instructions on how to build a character, and the Inquisition book tells you how to work them into an organization and what weapons you can give them. There's even a couple of blood alchemy gifts in there that you can give to your player character Thin Bloods. It's a good book. It is a good book, but I know a lot of people are going to be disappointed with it because it's not aimed at players. It's aimed to storytellers. But I'm just going to say this straight out. I could not run the game that I run right now if everybody in the game who's sitting around that table with me wasn't participating in the storytelling experience. Even the players are storytellers. And I understand that's not why this book was written. It was written to add a threat to games. I've run a hunter game before, and it was a lot of fun. Half of the game died at once, and the other half was arrested. So there's definitely repercussions for playing a hunter, just as there's repercussions for playing a vampire. I'm really looking forward to what's going to happen when Werewolf comes out, Because Werewolf is probably going to be the first book that we see like this that isn't an antagonist book. It's not another monster manual. It's going to be a player's book. I hope. Oh my god. Could you imagine if we were waiting all this time and like they finally brought out the Werewolf book and it was just an antagonist book for your vampires? Oh my god, you guys would riot. Oh my god. Okay. Well, I've been rambling on long enough. I want to say that if you are interested in having heightened weapons in your game, actual like rules, that you don't have to like pen yourself on how like flash grenades work and stuff like that, it's a damn good book. And it can be used both for storytellers and player characters. If you're wanting to play hunters, the resources in this book are invaluable. I will just point that straight out. Not only does it give you weapons and stuff like that, like we were just talking about, but it also gives you a look into the different societies that are hunting vampires. Let it be church-oriented or government or coalition. But yeah, that is the book. I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. If you've already gotten a copy, what was your take reading through it? Because this was, I'm going to fully admit that this is the first book that I've done a review on for V5, specifically V5, not the Book of Nod, because I've read that thing like a billion times. But this is the first book that I read cover to cover before I did the review. And I'm going to be doing that from now on, even if it takes a little bit longer to get the book reviews out, because I want to give you guys my full impression instead of my first impressions. First impressions are fun. Maybe I'll do first impressions and then I'll do a review. Who knows? That actually sounds like a lot of fun anyway, because I get giddy and stupid when I get a new toy. The reason I'm saying that is because I have found content in books that I've done reviews on in the past that made me just turn my head and go, oh my god, I gave this such a positive thought, but I didn't have the whole picture. And now I regret what I had said. Not that the content wasn't good, but like there were portions of it that just kind of like ate away at my conscience of, I cannot believe I said, everything in this book was amazing, and I was just overexcited. So anyway, yeah, that is the Second Inquisition, a source book for Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition. It's well put together, it's well written, it has fun content stuff in it, and it is a monster manual. Just throwing that out there again. I am Voivode Macat. This is Our World of Darkness, and thank you for joining me again in the halls of the Noddist Library. Good evening.